Gracie Slick is special. As the lead singer of the Jefferson Airplane, now called Starship, she's unquestionably one of the queens of rock music.
Grace Slick didn't just sing rock, she owned it. Her voice was powerful, her presence unforgettable, and her songs changed everything.
I'm so used to the volume that we sing at that when I hear my own voice like this, it echoes back, rings in my ears, and I'm afraid to speak out.
As the lead singer of Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship, she became a symbol of the wild, rebellious 60s and 70s. Hits like White Rabbit and Somebody to Love still echo today. So why hasn't Grace jumped back for a Jefferson Starship reunion like so many rock legends?
Do you miss those wild times?
Not particularly, because it's more interesting now because it's more varied. It was very focused.
It's a question fans have asked for years. That choice says everything about who she is: bold, true, and fiercely independent. The answer? Well, that's a story worth digging into. The rise of Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship. Before Jefferson Starship ever blasted off, there was Jefferson Airplane, and it was flying high on the winds of rebellion, acid, and anthems. Formed in San Francisco in 1965, Jefferson Airplane quickly became the face of the psychedelic rock scene. Their music wasn't just something to hum along to, it was a full-body experience. Soundtracked by fuzzy guitars, trippy lyrics, and political fire, they were the perfect storm for a generation that was done playing nice. When Grace Slick joined in 1966, the band leveled up instantly. She came from another band called The Great Society and brought 2 songs with her that would become instant classics: White Rabbit and Somebody to Love. Her voice, cool, commanding, and a little dangerous, became the band's secret weapon. You didn't just listen to Grace, you felt her. Jefferson Airplane wasn't afraid to get weird or get loud. They played Woodstock, shared stages with the Grateful Dead and Janis Joplin, and delivered politically charged sets that sometimes got them banned, but never ignored. They weren't just a band, they were a movement. Messy, wild, brilliant. By the early 70s, though, things were starting to crack. Lineups shifted, egos clashed, and the music world was moving into a slicker, more polished sound. Rather than fall apart completely, the band morphed. Jefferson Airplane became Jefferson Starship, a new version of the band that kept some original members but leaned more into radio-friendly rock. It was evolution, survival, and maybe a bit of compromise. Grace stuck with them through the transformation, her voice now powering big arena anthems instead of acid-drenched odysseys. Jefferson Starship brought hits like Miracles, Count on Me, and Jane, giving the band new life and a whole new audience. They weren't just hippie legends anymore, they were chart toppers. But with bigger success came bigger complications, and what started as a reinvention would eventually spiral into something even Grace couldn't hang with for long. But before we get there, let's talk about how the cracks started to show. The splintering of the band. By the late 70s, Jefferson Starship was riding high, but behind the scenes, things were getting bumpy. Fame has a funny way of stretching people thin, and in this band, personalities were big, and tempers were even bigger. What started as a creative supergroup started feeling more like a crowded room full of clashing egos. There were classic rock band problems, harmful substances, alcohol, exhaustion, and a never-ending tug-of-war over the band's identity. Was it still rooted in the psychedelic freedom of Jefferson Airplane? Or had it fully transformed into a polished stadium rock machine? Everyone had a different opinion, and those opinions came with volume knobs turned to 11. Paul Kantner, one of the band's founding members, wanted to keep the spirit of rebellion alive. he clashed hard with the direction things were headed, especially as the sound shifted toward poppier, more commercial territory. Grace, always outspoken, wasn't shy about her frustrations either. There were arguments, walkouts, and at times, no love lost between bandmates. The real blow came in the early 80s when Cantner quit and took the name Jefferson with him. Literally. A legal battle followed, and the remaining members were forced to drop Jefferson from the name. They became just Starship, and that was the beginning of a whole different beast. Grace stuck around through it all, but it was clear this wasn't the same band she'd once poured her soul into. The music shifted hard toward glossy, radio-ready hits like "We Built This City" and "Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now." The songs were catchy, sure, but the rebellious spirit that once defined the group had been buried under synthesizers and soft-focus music videos. Grace wasn't exactly thrilled with the new direction. The raw, gritty, mind-expanding music of the 60s had turned into something safe and shiny, and she wasn't built for safe or shiny. Tension kept building, and by the time the 80s were winding down, she was about ready to call it quits. But before she made her final exit, she left one last mark on the stage. Let's talk about the moment Grace Slick decided to step away for good, and why. Grace Slick's departure and final performance. By 1988, Grace Slick had had enough. She was 48, still a powerhouse on stage, but in her mind, she had crossed an invisible line. Rock and roll, she believed, was a young person's game, full of energy, wild emotion, and a touch of recklessness. And while she could still bring the fire, she didn't want to be a grown woman pretending to be a wild-eyed 20-something. So, she walked away. Her official departure from Starship came that year, marking the end of her music career. Not with a bang or a bitter press release, but with a firm, clear decision. Grace wasn't kicked out. She wasn't pushed aside. She simply knew it was time. And true to form, she said so in the most Grace Slick way possible. Old people don't belong on a rock and roll stage. It wasn't about ageism or insecurity. For her, it was about honesty. She didn't want to be part of a show that felt like an imitation of youth. Watching aging rockers on stage trying to recapture old glories didn't inspire her. It made her uncomfortable. She didn't want to become a parody of her younger self. Her final performances with Starship were electric, no doubt, but you could tell she was already halfway out the door. The sparkle was still there, but the excitement wasn't. Grace wasn't one to fake it, and she wasn't going to pretend just to keep the machine running. After that, she disappeared from the spotlight almost entirely. No tours, no solo comeback, no Vegas residencies. She made a clean break and stuck to it, which in the world of rock, where retirement is often just code for until next summer, is pretty much unheard of. There have been a few brief exceptions, like her appearance at the 1996 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, where Jefferson Airplane was finally recognized. She didn't perform, just showed up, said a few things, posed for some pictures, and stepped back into the shadows. No drama, no headlines, just Grace doing things her way, one last time. So the big question fans keep asking, why didn't she ever come back? Has a much bigger story behind it. It wasn't just about the band. It was about values, self-respect, and knowing when to let go. Let's dig into the reasons why she never looked back. Why she refused to reunite. Grace Slick isn't one to mince words, and she's been crystal clear about why a Jefferson Starship reunion was never going to happen. It's not because she hated the band, or the fans, or the music. She just didn't see the point of dragging the past into the present, especially when the past was already sitting there perfectly preserved on vinyl and tape. First, there's the age thing, and she's not shy about it. Grace has said over and over again that rock is a young person's art form. To her, it's about rawness, rebellion, and that electric jolt of discovery. Seeing someone in their 70s or 80s trying to summon that same energy just feels off to her. "You can't be a 70-year-old sex symbol," she once said in an interview. "That's just creepy." She's not trying to be mean. She's just being honest in a way most people aren't. Then there's the matter of authenticity. Grace has always had a sharp eye for phoniness, and she didn't want to become a living museum piece. Reuniting, in her view, would feel like acting, pretending to be something she no longer is. The idea of going on stage, running through old hits just for a paycheck, didn't sit right. She'd rather paint 100 canvases in silence than sing White Rabbit to a crowd looking for a flashback. She's also been open about how much the music industry changed, and not in a way that inspired her. In the 60s and 70s, music was protest, poetry, chaos, and change. By the time Starship was topping charts in the 80s, it felt more like a product than art. Slick was never afraid to admit that "we built this city" made her cringe. It wasn't that she didn't enjoy the ride, she just didn't want to ride it forever. And let's not forget, Grace Slick lived hard. She struggled with alcoholism for years and had more than a few close calls. Getting sober gave her a different kind of clarity, and part of that meant walking away from environments that once fueled her addiction. Touring, staying up late, living in hotels, being surrounded by pressure. None of that was compatible with the person she was trying to become. Finally, there's something kind of beautiful in the way she sees life after rock. She doesn't talk about her past with regret, and she doesn't seem to crave a comeback. She's found other ways to express herself, to stay creative, and to feel alive. For Grace, that's the real win, not filling stadiums again, but knowing she left before the curtain got pulled for her. So no, she didn't reunite with Jefferson Starship. Not because she couldn't, but because she chose not to. But no story about Grace Slick and Jefferson Starship would be complete without talking about the wild, sometimes messy influence of harmful substances and alcohol. The role of substance abuse in the band's story. The late 60s and 70s rock scene wasn't exactly known for moderation, and Grace was right in the thick of it, a symbol of the era's freewheeling spirit and its darker edges. Back then, substance use was almost part of the creative process. Psychedelics fueled the music's mind-expanding soundscapes, and drinking was as common as tuning your guitar. Grace wasn't just a participant, she embodied the highs and lows. Her powerful vocals came from a place of raw emotion and intensity, often amplified by the chaos of addiction and recovery. But the fun side of that lifestyle had a flip side. Grace battled alcoholism for years, and it took a toll on her health, relationships, and career. The pressures of constant touring, personal conflicts, and the demands of the music industry only made it harder. There were times when the line between artistic inspiration and self-destruction blurred. Her struggles weren't unique in the band. Many members wrestled with similar demons. Those battles fueled both creative breakthroughs and bitter disputes. Substance abuse was like a double-edged sword. It pushed the band to new heights, but also pulled them apart. It intensified tensions and contributed to the splintering of the group in the early 80s. Grace's eventual sobriety was a turning point. It gave her clarity and strength, but it also made her see things differently. The chaotic lifestyle she once thrived in wasn't sustainable anymore. Touring, partying, and the rock star lifestyle started to feel like traps rather than freedom. That shift played a huge role in her decision to leave the band. Walking away wasn't just about the music. It was about protecting herself and choosing health over chaos. Her refusal to reunite later on also reflects that hard-earned wisdom. She said before that some parts of that life are best left behind. In the end, Grace's story is a reminder of how intertwined creativity and struggle often are in rock music. It's about passion and pain, highs and lows, and it's about the strength it takes to say, enough. What Jefferson Starship became without her. Grace, Slick might have stepped away, but Jefferson Starship didn't just vanish with her. Like a band with 9 lives, it kept evolving, sometimes stumbling, sometimes soaring, but always moving forward in one form or another. Without Grace, the group lost one of its most iconic voices, sure, but it didn't lose its will to survive. In the early 90s, Paul Kantner decided to bring the Jefferson Starship name back. After his legal battles over the name years earlier, it was a little ironic, but also kind of fitting. He rebuilt the group from the ground up, bringing in new musicians, some old friends, and a fresh approach. This version of Jefferson Starship didn't have the chart power of its earlier days, but it had something else. A mission to keep the spirit alive. They toured, released new music, and kept the flame burning for longtime fans. They leaned into the legacy, playing the hits from both the Airplane and Starship eras, and introduced them to younger crowds who maybe only knew White Rabbit from movie soundtracks or late-night TV. And in a way, it worked. People showed up, people cheered, and people remembered. But let's be real. Without Grace, it wasn't quite the same. Her voice, her presence, her attitude, all of that was baked into the band's DNA. Even the most talented singers brought in to cover her parts couldn't recreate what she brought to the table. You can replicate the notes, but not the fire. Fans had mixed feelings. Some loved seeing the band continue, grateful for any chance to hear the music live again. Others saw it as a diluted version of the original, more tribute than revival. And with the constant lineup changes, members coming in, dropping out, rotating through, it sometimes felt more like a brand than a band. Still, credit where it's due. Jefferson Starship has lasted. That's not easy in an industry that chews bands up and spits them out. And even without Grace, the band's legacy got passed down. New generations of performers stepped in, keeping the catalog alive and giving old songs a new edge. But the question always lingered in the background. Would Grace ever walk through that door again, just once? Even just for a surprise song? She never did. While Jefferson Starship moved forward in its own way, Grace chose a completely different road. No stages, no microphones, just a paintbrush, a blank canvas, and a whole new chapter of creativity. The cultural impact of Jefferson Airplane and Starship. When you dive into the story of 60s and 70s rock, Jefferson Airplane sits right at the heart of the counterculture movement. This wasn't just any band. They were the voice of a generation caught in the whirlwind of social upheaval, political protests, and a radical shift in how people thought about life, love, and freedom. Grace Slick's unmistakable voice became one of the anthems of that era. A sonic beacon that echoed through protest rallies, music festivals, and living rooms across the country. Jefferson Airplane's music wasn't just entertainment. It was a bold statement. Tracks like White Rabbit, with its psychedelic nod to Alice in Wonderland, tapped into the collective consciousness of a generation experimenting with altered states and questioning authority. Somebody to Love was raw, urgent, and emotional. capturing the yearning and chaos of the times. The band's sound mirrored the turbulence and optimism of the era, swirling guitars, soaring vocals, and lyrics packed with meaning. But Jefferson Airplane wasn't just about the music. They embodied the spirit of the San Francisco scene, a melting pot of free thinkers, artists, and activists. Their shows were more than concerts. They were events that felt like community gatherings or political rallies. Grace Slick's presence, fierce, fearless, and unfiltered, challenged traditional gender roles and gave young women a powerful role model in rock. Fast forward to the transition into Jefferson Starship, and the band's cultural role shifted alongside their music. The raw, psychedelic energy gave way to a slicker, radio-friendly sound that captured the 80s rock-pop wave. Starship's chart toppers like "We Built This City" and "Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now" may have drawn criticism for being more commercial and less rebellious, but they still connected with audiences worldwide. This era showed the band's adaptability, proving that the core of their influence was about connecting with listeners, no matter the decade. Even as the sound evolved, the impact of Jefferson Airplane and Starship remained deep. They influenced countless artists, crossing genres and generations. From punk to alternative to indie rock, many have cited Grace Slick and the band as trailblazers who pushed boundaries both musically and culturally. Grace Slick's refusal to reunite with Jefferson Starship adds an interesting layer to their cultural legacy. In an age where nostalgia tours and reunion albums are commonplace, her decision protects the original spirit of the band. Instead of diluting that legacy with repetitive comebacks, she keeps the flame of authenticity burning bright. It's like saying, "This moment in time was special. Let it stay special." In this way, Jefferson Airplane and Starship's cultural impact isn't just tied to their music, but also to their timing, their message, and their choices. They remind us that music can be a catalyst for change, a reflection of society's highs and lows, and a way to express who we are when the world is shifting beneath our feet. Even today, their songs pop up in films, commercials, and covers, continuing to inspire new audiences. Their story is a testament to how music transcends time, not just as sound, but as a living, breathing part of cultural history and Grace Slick's post-music career. When Grace Slick left music, she didn't just retire, she transformed. A lot of rock stars disappear after the spotlight fades, slipping quietly into private lives or half-hearted nostalgia circuits. But not Grace. She took all that creative energy, that bite and color and chaos, and channeled it somewhere new, the art world. Painting, she said, gave her the same kind of Rush music once did, only without the hangovers, hotel rooms, and endless sound checks. Her style? Bright, bold, unapologetic, a little surreal, a little psychedelic, and always unmistakably her. She painted animals, celebrities, musicians, and yes, herself. It wasn't just a hobby. Grace became a full-time visual artist, showing her work in galleries and art fairs across the country. Her art didn't feel like a side hustle or a vanity project. It was genuine, honest, and just as rebellious in its own way. Fans who once lined up for concerts were now lining up at art shows, buying prints and originals and chatting with Grace, not the rock star, but the painter. She didn't stop being opinionated either. Over the years, she's given some brutally honest interviews about everything from aging, addiction, politics, and, of course, the music industry. She's called out the plasticity of modern pop, the strange obsession with youth in entertainment, and the awkwardness of watching old rockers try to act like they're still 25. She's funny, sharp, and still has zero interest in sugarcoating anything. And yet, through all of it, she's managed to age on her own terms, something few stars can say. No forced comebacks, no reality TV, no farewell tours that never end. Just a woman who lived loud, changed course, and didn't look back. Her post-music life hasn't been about fame or recognition. It's been about freedom. Painting in her home studio, staying out of the headlines, spending time with friends and family, living a life that doesn't need a stage to feel full. And maybe that's the real legacy, not just the voice that helped define an era, but the quiet strength it took to walk away while she still had something to say. Let's zoom out a bit and look at how the reunion culture around bands has exploded, and why Grace, as usual, wasn't buying in. Changing dynamics in music and reunion culture. In today's music world, reunions are basically a business model. Bands that once split up with public brawls and dramatic exits are now headlining comeback tours, reissuing box sets, and selling out arenas filled with fans who want one more shot at the magic. Fleetwood Mac came back. The Eagles came back. Even bands that swore they were done buried the hatchet and hit the road again. It's not uncommon to see farewell tours followed a few years later by reunion tours, and then, surprise, one more farewell. The cycle keeps spinning because the demand never seems to die. It makes sense. Fans want to relive their youth, hear the songs that shaped their lives, and scream the lyrics with thousands of others doing the same. And artists, many of whom miss the energy of live shows or want to cash in while they still can, oblige. Everybody wins, mostly. But not Grace Slick. She said it clearly. She has no interest in becoming a nostalgia jukebox. To her, the past belongs to the past. Going back just to go back feels like a step in the wrong direction. Sure, the music lives on, and that's beautiful. But she's not trying to recreate the 60s or pretend she's still that same girl with the mic and the leather pants. Grace has also pointed out the uncomfortable truth that not all reunions feel right. When a band's original chemistry is gone, due to time, loss, or just plain evolution, trying to patch it back together can look awkward. What makes her different from many of her peers is that she doesn't need the stage. A lot of artists feel lost without it, and fair enough. It's addictive. The crowd, the lights, the rush. But Grace seems genuinely at peace, not chasing that high. She had her moment. She owned it. Then she let it go. And in a strange way, that makes her even more rock and roll. Grace Slick's influence on female rockers and feminism in music. Slick wasn't just a voice of a band. She was a voice for women in rock, at a time when female musicians were often sidelined or pigeonholed. The late 60s and early 70s weren't exactly overflowing with women fronting psychedelic rock bands, let alone commanding the stage with the kind of confidence and attitude Grace had. She broke the mold and smashed the glass ceiling with a cigarette in one hand and a mic in the other. What made Grace stand out wasn't just her powerful, unmistakable voice. It was her presence. She was fierce, unapologetic, and often downright intimidating. In an industry dominated by men who often tried to control or diminish women, Grace called her own shots. She refused to be a muse or a background singer. She was the lead, the star, and sometimes the troublemaker. And that kind of defiant energy was revolutionary. Her style, too, was a form of rebellion. Forget the doll-like stereotypes or the soft, sweet female singer trope. Grace dressed bold and brash, mixing glam, punk, and psychedelic styles before those were even words people used. She could wear leather, makeup, and high heels on stage and still sound like the voice of a generation on fire. She embraced her sexuality and intelligence simultaneously, showing the world women could be complex and powerful without apology. Grace's attitude and artistry paved the way for countless female rockers who followed. You can trace a line from her to Joan Jett, Stevie Nicks, Patti Smith, and even into modern icons like PJ Harvey and St. Vincent. Each one of these artists, in their own way, picked up the mantle Grace handed down. A refusal to be confined, a demand for respect, and the courage to be their authentic selves. Beyond just the music, Grace's presence was a feminist statement. She challenged the idea that women in rock had to be passive or pretty. Instead, she was bold, sometimes combative, always in control. She didn't wait for permission. She took what she wanted, on her own terms. That kind of attitude changed the game, and it's a big part of why she remains a cultural icon. So when Grace refused to reunite with Jefferson Starship, it wasn't just about the band's music or business. It was about staying true to a lifetime of being unapologetically herself. She set a powerful example, showing women in music that it's okay to say no, to walk away, and to demand authenticity. That legacy, loud, proud, and fearless, is maybe Grace's greatest contribution to rock and roll. Legacy and reflection. Grace Slick's decision to refuse a Jefferson Starship reunion isn't just a footnote in rock history, it's a statement. It's about owning your story, setting boundaries, and choosing authenticity over nostalgia or profit. In a world where so many artists chase the next big comeback, she chose something rarer, the courage to walk away on her own terms. Her voice still echoes in the music that inspired generations. Grace helped define an era of fearless expression and political defiance, and that's no small feat. Meanwhile, Jefferson Starship, for better or worse, has carved out its own path without her. The band kept adapting, playing to new audiences, and keeping the music alive. But without Grace's spark, it's a different story. More polished, less raw, more business than rebellion. Yet, for Grace, the real legacy is beyond the music. It's in her art, her honesty, and her example of knowing when to step back and create space for something new. She shows that reinvention doesn't always mean a new album or tour. Sometimes it means picking up a paintbrush instead of a microphone. Saying no to reunion tours, to playing the nostalgia game, and to going back to a version of herself she no longer recognized might be the most powerful encore she ever gave us. In a culture obsessed with comebacks, Grace Slick reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing is to simply say, "I'm done." And honestly, that's pretty rock and roll. Are you a fan of Grace or the band? Write your comments in the section below, and if you want more contents like this, subscribe to the channel for free.